Get to Know Your Artists is about getting to know our local artists in Bloemfontein, who they are, what they do, and why they do what they do. And this afternoon we have the beautiful Vivica, who's going to grace us with amazing performances, and then have a seat right here on my couch for some good conversation. Let's go, Vivica.
So I call this first piece my Genesis, simply because it's a little bit of an origin story. In the beginning was the Word, and a little brown girl who ran through life backwards, armed with curiosity older than prostitution and no limits on her heels. When I was 7, I thought I could dig my way into hell, find cinder and char and face the beast before I became it. At 14, I thought I found its glare in the gaze of a girl's eyes. Her scent, the allure I'd abandoned salvation for, but later, when her smile proved to be merely a waning sunset, without heartache or tears to smudge or smear the ink, I find myself poem to paper for the first time. Strange, I'd realize, and curious too. My pens and fingers to get the difference between lovers and lost ones, folding each of the appraisals and rejections into apologies that I will pin to my notebook and call closure. At 16, I took words to war, found the silent killer lurking the back alleys of my mind, and took to stage to call him out. Sent my voice over a microphone like a wind had swept, and I wept the day words wielded a weapon worth waving. When I was 18, my world fell open. A lotus blooming proudly at its own arrival, I learned style and metaphors and sonnets and odes, and I finally found the place. My mind untamed in all of its natural chaos on display, because here I'm an artist. My pain pliable and finally a place to rest all of this hurt. The year I turned 20, I abandoned style for structure. After love had left me a battered field once again, and I wrote a haiku about how I am still all of me even without you, and later I'd write a duet for the first time. Turn poem into story and story into sisterhood. I am learning to create from the fibers of my words. Now, I am 21 years, 8 weeks. I'm 21 years, 9 months, and 3 weeks old. I still haven't seen the gates of hell. But sometimes I dream of burning, a jovial exsanguination and love that lights longer than incense, and remind myself that there is still healing to be done. Most days the poet is silent, watching life run foreign directions. I've traded curiosity for caution. I've written too many tragedies and loved them through to charge head in first, and still I know comfort is only as far as it takes to find yourself, and finally I'm too tired to be anything but soul, and not enough flesh to appease another. Thank you. I'm finally here,
And I'm so happy. I'm so happy to have you here now.
Hello, I'm actually really excited to be here.
You know, you're the person that made me join Pro Club.
Really? You did that because
I saw your performance in 2019. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be like that girl. And it was I'm not lying. I promise.
Are you serious?
Yes. Because you are a beautiful performer.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I want to know, when and how did your poetry journey begin? When did you fall in love with poetry?
This one is wild because I've been writing for as long as I can remember. Still, my family's like, we're all hoarders, so at home you'll still find like things that I wrote when I was 5, 6, like for as long as I could write, I did. But it was always just almost like journaling. And then only when I got to like high school did it start to like take structure, because then you learn in English, and that was basically my only exposure for the long time. And then grade 10, so I must have been like 15, I took a creative writing course, and that's where I found my first mentor. And he was like, you have a way with words. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I like them. And we had like a 5-minute conversation, and he was like, listen, this is only this week, but if you want, we have like a community group, like a few areas away from where I live, and you can come through. And I kind of learned to then like write with like shorter style pieces. Started introducing like wordplay. So I think that is when it started to shape into poetry. But as far as like any form of literature goes, that's been birth, I guess.
I'd also like to think that the places that we come from, right, also contribute in the type of things that we will do in the future,
definitely,
right? So just quickly tell us, where do you come from, and like how's the poetry space there?
Okay, so I am originally from the Eastern Cape, Port Elizabeth. It's now named Vivica. And we've lived there my entire life. So as far as I was concerned, even a career in anything artistic wasn't a reality. That group that I worked with, the man I just told you about who became my mentor for a little while, his name is Brian Walters. And he's formed like a community group where they teach kids how to write, and it's just supposed to be like, because it's very dangerous areas. I grew up in the safer side of the city, so there's a lot of gang violence and like all those things, and they're like, you know, NGOs that try and keep the kids out of that. And Brian was like, from my knowledge, one of the first and only groups that work with kids that age. So like at a young age, there's not much of a way to get into it. Most of it starts when you get into university, because that's where you become like artistically aware. But as far as most of the community goes in like this, like the northern areas, there's not much.
Would you say that when you finally got to varsity with ASCS, that's when you kind of became artistically awakened and artistically more in tune then?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I have a notepad from like things that I wrote on my phone back in grade 12, and it was like when I got to university, not only was I exposed to like 100 like different genres and voices and like artistic codes, it was mind-blowing. And when you're exposed to all these other art forms, it really can only help yours grow. So I'm like, definitely varsity was where I woke up.
And how did varsity kind of start defining you as Vivica, the poet? And how do you then define yourself in that world of poetry?
I can say that because of the fact that like my university experience was so vastly different from my home experience. It was a lot, like I had a lot more exposure, a lot more experience, and because I'm completely away from my family, a lot more freedom to experience things that like I wanted to do. And when I started immersing myself in like creative spaces, I also found that like I became more free-spirited and I felt more able to be myself, you know. And I think that because of that freedom, almost that permission to just be yourself, because it's not something that I had a lot of at home, because your mom's daughter, you're most. What else are you trying to be? So when I left, I got to be me, and that really started to reflect in my writing. I've been able to find a voice that I feel is uniquely mine, whereas before a lot of what I was writing seemed to be the mimic styles of people that I did admire and look up to. And those were all like internet people, so they're not even like, you know. I know that was heavy, so the next piece, a love poem. And I pulled this one through time. I wanted to write you a love poem, immortalizing passions we have not named yet, but could only conjure up the image of you. Your smile with no metaphors and peering Friday eyes, armed with the curiosity of all forever in this moment could hold. And I wanted to sing you songs, serenade you with all of its beauty, but beauty had already been found in the maps on your skin. The scattered landmarks that lie printed on your back, begging to be traced to some future we have not yet imagined. I tried to write and wrote out a heartache from 10 seasons ago, but your hands drew me back, snatching me from the clasp of hurt, and your arms held me like a life raft in a troubled sea. There is a peace that resides here, dwelling in the bed of a lover who I've known for eternities but only just reached, and I imagine that we've loved 1,000 times before. Each kiss a portal to the ways loved prior. Once I was a caterpillar, afraid of its own bloom, and you, the anxious sky above me, curious of its beauty, but I died early, and you poured out the clouds for me, flooded the earth, and this time not even the Ark of Noah survived before. You are a hunter, sent with a bounty to cut my heart out, but I stole yours first, and you let me get away, and I loved you always in the noise of small men and long holes with big voices, and I imagine that we've loved this way through the ages, from the time you stood before me as the first man. The breath of God coursing through your lungs until some curse befell us, and I loved you still in blood and breath and bore you the world. This story has been read and written so